we are subject to some things that are true, whether we like it or not. The problem is that we tend to pick alternate realities that we want to live in, and the facts don't necessarily sway us because our reality fits what we want life to be like more than what it actually is. I get this every time I go and talk to a Cowboys fan who still thinks they are America's team and the greatest dynasty that has ever existed. But sometimes life is just going to come and it's going to hit you in a way that's going to shake you out of what you think life should be like, and it's going to remind you about what life actually is. It's a lot like we're Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story 1, where Buzz comes out of the box and instead of realizing who he really is and what that means for him, he believes he's a real space ranger on some distant planet talking to the locals and trying to figure out a way to get his rocket ship fixed so he can go back home. And it takes him multiple times in the story of running into conflict, running into things that bump up against that reality and prove that it's wrong, that the words of his friend Woody finally kick in. You are a toy. And for many of us, we might need somebody that comes every once in a while as we bump into all these things that remind us that what we think life is like isn't what it's really like. And they might need to say to us, you are a human being. We're not this creature we pretend we are. We are a human being, which means there are certain things that are going to apply to us whether we like it or not. And it doesn't matter how much we live like these things aren't true. Eventually, they're going to catch up to us and get us. Like whether or not you like it, you need to sleep. And when you don't sleep, eventually your body is going to pay the price. Or if you act as if your spirit and your mind and your emotions and your body are not connected and one doesn't affect the other, well, then you're going to eventually reach a point where that's going to catch up to you and you're going to burn out somewhere, somehow. And there's this other one, too, that we don't always like to admit. You and I, and everyone else who has ever lived, has been designed that we will need other people. We cannot do this life alone. And the problem is that we often relate to these other people that we are supposed to be doing life together with, and we react to them and we relate to them out of our brokenness instead of out of any place of healing and health. So the part that's cracked in me, the piece that's missing, I have this need that I feel and I go looking for it in all the other people around me. Ones that are going to validate my insecurity and tell me how good I look or tell me how great I did at work. The ones that are going to want to be by my side. And so I do all these things to make sure I'm likable or approachable or I have the best looking date or whatever it is. And I don't really care about the other people. I just care about what they've done for me or how they make me feel. Because when other people are there to meet my needs, to fill in my cracks, and that's it, well, what I'm doing is I'm treating them like goods. There's something, not someone, but something to be bought, something to be used, and then something to be discarded when it's no longer fulfilling what I bought it for. And why a lot of us, when we find someone that's not meeting the need that we think they should be meeting for us, we find them super annoying. And so we've got to do whatever we can to get rid of them, whether that's ignoring their texts or yelling at them or being incredibly rude until they finally get the hint and go away, because we're dealing with them out of the broken parts of our lives and not the healthy or life-giving parts of our lives. And yet how we relate to other people isn't a small thing. It is incredibly important to Jesus. In fact, how we treat other people, he gives specific marching orders. Like imagine if you're playing Simon Says, and anytime Simon doesn't use the word Simon Says, he'll say something, and that's something he does not want you to do. But every time he says Simon Says, that's exactly what he wants you to do, and that's only what he wants you to do. And basically what Jesus is doing in Matthew chapter 7, what we're about to read, is he's giving us marching orders that are the Simon Says. And the Simon Says is always the same. It's always this. It says, Simon says, so in everything, Do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Now you might need some context for who he's saying this to, so you can maybe not have the wiggle room you want when he says, so in everything. Because he's saying these words to the working poor, to the needy, to the sick, to the destitute, to the crippled, to those that are being oppressed by their government and by other people who have more money than they have. And he's telling it to people that are incredibly discouraged. In other words, he's saying these words to people who would love for somebody else to step up and meet a lot of their needs. They would love to have someone else that they could use to get what they want. They might even do it a tit for tat kind of exchange. There's a win-win, but that's what they're looking for. And then he tells them that they need to be willing to do to others what they would want them to do to them, not what they have done. And he tells them this because he wants them to be like their Father. He's basing it on the character of God. He said, which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone, or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Because we have a good Father, he meets our needs in ways that give life and not harm. And because you can trust that he is good and he will meet needs in our lives, then we don't have to live life with this idea of scarcity and brokenness where everything is missing and we've got to figure out how to fill it, and I've got to fill it for myself, and that means maybe you won't get what you need. No, with our good Father, he knows exactly what we need. And he knows how to give us good gifts. So I don't need to treat people as a means to an end anymore. I can treat them with genuine concern. I can treat them with a love that reflects the love God has shown to me. And by the way, if we live this way, all of the law and the prophets, in other words, all of the Old Testament Word of God, all of the things that these people who were hearing this thought was the ultimate authority on what lifestyle was supposed to look like, all of that hinges on this command to do to others what you would have them do to you. So what does doing to others what you would have them do to you look like? Well, Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 5 to the family. He's trying to talk about how this family dynamic is going to work. Because remember, we're relating to each other. We're connected to each other. We're built for that. So how do we do that? And he says in Ephesians 5:21, basically, how are you supposed to do this command in the setting of family or with others? Submit to one another. Which is not how we tend to like to navigate through life. I'd rather have it be submit to me. And so a famous pastor once said that the way to navigate through life together in order to submit to one another is to ask the question, what can I do to help you? This is different than the usual improvement method we use to fill our brokenness, which is, what can you do for me? And when what you can do for me is what we ask, then we have these tools that we go through to try and get what we want from you. Like flattery, where we'll say things that sound nice, but we don't mean it. We just know if I butter you up, maybe we'll get a little kickback. And if that doesn't work, we'll try nagging. And whenever dishes aren't done, the dishes aren't done, the dishes aren't done, the dishes aren't done. Maybe we'll go into lecturing where we'll try and convince people about how wrong they are for living the way they're living and treating us the way they're treating us. Or maybe we'll just ignore people, because there's this push-pull dynamic in relationships as well. And if we want somebody to get closer to us, some of us have learned this technique. I did it in wrestling all the time. I would come up, and there's people much bigger than me, and I would push on them, and their response would be to push back at me. And usually you end up, if both people were pushing, you kind of fight like this. But what I would learn is if I would push, and then when they would come to push back, I would kind of back away, that they would fall into me, and that was how I would get most of my pins. For a lot of us, we have relationships that we treat that way too, is when we need a little bit more touch from them, we'll just ignore them. We'll pull back, we'll withdraw, and we'll watch them come stumbling towards us, because then we'll be able, when they're in that vulnerable place, to get what we need out of them. How do you like it when people use those kinds of techniques on you to fill their own brokenness? You see, there's a shift that happens when we become worried about what we can give to someone before we're worried about what they can get for us. When we realize that our needs are covered by our Father, I don't have to worry about my claims or my rights. And we love to talk about rights, especially in our country. And rights are good things. But what would happen if Christians were known, instead of fighting super hard for our own rights, that we were fighting super hard for other people's rights? Like, what can I do to protect your rights? What can I do to help you get what you need? Not as concerned for myself, because I know God's already got me under control and I am good. And what would really be radical is if we would do this submitting to others out of reverence for Christ. In other words, I'm not doing to others who deserve it. Like, who am I to even say that? I'm not doing to others what they did to me. I'm not even doing to others what I feel like doing for them. Instead, I am serving even the undeserving out of reverence for Christ, because he served me even when I was undeserving. He saw our brokenness. He saw how fractured our relationship with God was, and he said, what can I do to help? Aren't you thankful that Christ did that in such a way that led him to the cross and to an empty tomb? And we can show our thankfulness by keeping this marching order of doing to others what we would have them do to us. With his help, knowing what he does for us already, we're enabled, instead of always trying to grab and grasp and pant for what we need, to take a deep breath and to slow down, because we have peace in the midst of our needs. James 1:19 and 20 says, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Talk about some ways to serve others, listening to understand instead of planning for a response, giving people the benefit of the doubt, realizing that they're responding out of their own brokenness, so anger might not be the best response, but compassion could be. And with our broken parts filled, the goal isn't to win or conquer more territory. The goal is to work together to solve whatever the issue is, even if it might cost you a little bit. For a lot of us, that's hard because we have plans for our day without any margin, and we see somebody else's need, and we could even ask, how could I serve you? And we get frustrated because we're like, I can't. I don't have time. I don't have money. I don't have whatever. We've got so much to do. And yet I wonder what it would be like if we applied this principle to it, because what would you want to have happen if someone saw you in need? See, loving our neighbors means dealing with detours and distractions because they matter, not because they're deserving. There was a man who was going down the road, and he got besieged by these bandits that just took him out. They beat him up. They threw him to the ground and left him to die alone with all of his stuff gone. And there was a couple of religious people that walked by on their way to go to the temple to serve, because they had big business, important things, God things that they needed to do. And so they saw the man, and they saw him, and they're like, I don't have time. It'll be too inconvenient. It's going to cost me too much if I go over there now. And so they left the man to die on the side of the road while they kept going. And then there was this man who was a Samaritan, who was the absolute worst in their eyes, like the enemy, the apostate, the worst person you could think of. And he saw this man on the side of the road, and he knew that he was still busy, and he knew he had places to go, and he was on that road because he was headed somewhere already. But he stopped. He cleaned the man's wounds as best he could. He put him on his horse. He covered him with his own clothes, and he took him to some place that he could get cared for and heal up, and he paid the bill for the man. And Jesus, when he told that story, asked which one of these people was the neighbor to this one. And he could have said, which one of these people kept the marching order that I've given you? Get to know the people you rub shoulders with. Pray for them. Give something away when you see a need that you can help with, because you're not worried about scarcity when you have a God who gives good gifts to you. I mean, Jesus gave what people needed, whether it was teaching, healing, food, his very life. What can you do but share a meal or give time on a phone call or rake someone's leaves or give them a way to meet Jesus too? Divine moments happen when we live this kind of lifestyle. There was a time when somebody would bring extra pastries from Panera, and people would come, and instead of keeping them for themselves, they would give them away to other people and say, hey, we've got more than we need. Let's bless you with these things. And so the pastries would get wrapped, and some of the pastries would get taken by some people to an adult care home. And in that adult care home, you had a couple of workers, and you had a lot of people who were there because they could not care for themselves. And you would say, why in the world would you, if you were only worried about yourself, ever go there? Because what could they offer you? What was even more interesting is the pastries got delivered week after week after week, is that the building was kind of run down and needed a lot of repairs, so there were some handymen there. And these handymen would speak badly about the people that were dropping off the food on a regular basis. Call them by names, call them terrible things. As soon as they would leave, go and make up incredible stories about how depraved and dangerous and all the stuff that people dropping off the food were. And yet they kept delivering. And they never said a bad word in response. They just kept serving. They just kept asking, what can I do to help you in that place? Eventually the handy people left. The workers started to notice a difference enough that they came to know Christ, which spread to the people in that place getting to know Christ, which led to lifestyles changing in such a way that other people came to know Christ. And as of today, about 12 or 13 years later, that little pastry delivery service has brought at least 30 people to Christ and has launched at least 4 different kinds of ministries literally around the world. Divine moments happen when we do what Jesus asked us to do. And so is there a relationship in your life that you need to apply these marching orders to? Instead of worrying about what they can give you, instead of worrying if they're undeserving or not, do you need to ask, what can I do to help you? Because I need to do to you what I long for you to do for me. Or maybe you are worried about the fact that if you do that, how will you get what you need? And you need a reminder that you have a good Father who knows how to give good gifts to his children. In other words, what is the one way that you can move with Jesus this week as he calls you to live this kind of life? Heavenly Father, give us the kind of grace that Jesus shows us. That instead of worrying about what we can get out of people, we are more concerned with what we have to offer them. Instead of worrying about our own brokenness, we would start to see the brokenness in others and say, how can I help? Not because we don't have brokenness in our own lives, but because we know you. We know that you are ultimately the one who brings healing, who brings hope, who brings peace, and who fills us. And that sometimes it's through the very cracks and broken places that we have that your grace and love spills out of us most effectively to others. So help us, God, to do to others what we would have them do to us, even those that we feel like aren't worth much or don't deserve much. Remind us again and again that we can give because you are the one who fills us back up. And keep us close to Christ, that we can move where he is going, that we might see incredible things happen just by being obedient. We ask this in your name. Amen.